Greetings, traveler. I am Synox, the teller of tales. Would you like to hear one? Well, this one is called Guy Gets Frustrated That We're Doing Exactly What We Said We Would Do, Devolves into Verbal Abuse. Buckle up. It's long and a story all about how I really need to get better at believing people the first time they tell me who they are. So we had a nice twice-monthly group going with some friends and I knew well from work. My husband DMing and his longtime buddy joining in. Until the virus hit, we were in person and we tended to laugh and chat and catch up at the table beforehand while waiting for folks to arrive. One of the downers about playing online is that it takes a lot longer. In order to make sure we jammed as much gaming in as possible, we cut out a lot of the chatter at the beginning and pretty much jumped right into the game as soon as everyone got there. Now, in order to really understand this, you need to know that we all come from different environments with different levels of crappy childhoods, and we knew we all have different buttons. At the very beginning of the campaign, we sat down and had a very concerted session 0 with safety tools and a hard and fast agreement that if something ever bothered us, we would pause the game and talk it out. Some things I put out there. It bugs me when people cancel sessions last minute. Obviously, it can't always be helped, but the "Hey man, sorry, someone just asked if I can go to dinner and I think I'm gonna" things bug the heck out of me. I also, at the time, have 0 session, had to cut my abusive parents off after my father attempted to end my sister's life, and I admitted I was not doing the greatest. One of the buttons they installed in me was respect other people's time, and while I am trying to train myself to be cool, rejection-sensitive dysphoria is a beast. Everyone was like, yeah, totally, makes sense. Cancellations will be for unforeseen circumstances like car trouble, or illness, or a roving pack of bonobos are eating my insulation. My only other boundaries were no ableism in game. I am a wheelchair user and I played one too, and holy crap, I get enough of that in real life. Readily agreed. Everyone went around the table and stated 1 or 2 things they didn't want to see. Most made sense. One was kind of out there, but we respected it anyway because that's what friends do. Then we got this guy playing a monk. He's always been a little brash, not the best social skills. We usually forgave him, because he usually makes an immediate effort to understand where he went wrong. The DM asked if he had anything, and he said, "No, because I'm not stupid." My head swiveled around. That is not an okay thing to say, I said. It's hateful, and neurodivergence has nothing to do with what we're talking about. Why would you say something like that? He immediately said, "I'm sorry, that was just what everybody said when I was growing up, like how everything was gay. It slipped out. I won't say that again." We did what we always did, papered it over. That was a mistake. The DM set about describing the campaign he was planning to run. High Magic, 5th edition, a little serious, a little silly, very heavy on the roleplay, lighter on combat. He planned to do character arcs where everybody's character spends little time as the focus for a few sessions. Did that work for everyone? Enthusiastic nods, excitement. Some of the group had never played a story-heavy game before and were stoked to get to try. Immediately, everyone fell to brainstorming, including the monk. Fast forward about a year to the Rona times. We've moved online for safety. It's my character's arc. She's a bard, estranged from her rich family as she ran off to join the circus. Now, with a rising threat, she needed to return home and rescue her brother-in-law and convince them to flee to safety. By now, the DM attempted to give the monk, an assassin who doesn't know he's an assassin, his arc. He kept refusing it, literally walking away from plot hooks and refusing the call. To get Campbellian about it. The DM texted him about it to see what was up, and he said he just didn't feel like his character would do that. Fair enough. They strategized a bit to get some ideas about development. In-game, the monk is constantly snippy with the hard. Granted, sassy butt biscuit was part of his character, but it was always geared at the bard. I was in the middle of trying to handle a sensitive diplomatic situation with the brother-in-law, and the monk makes a pointed jab about, "Can we just get past your anxiety disorder and fight already?" I saw red. I activated the safety measure from session 0 and stepped away to try to calm down so as not to say anything regrettable. When I come back in the call, the monk is raging. "I have limited time off. I don't want to waste it like this." I'm sorry, what? I asked. I don't want to sit around and debate for half an hour. I keep trying to steer us toward combat, but every time I do, Fish Mom just starts role-playing the whore. We talked about all this early on, I said. It's a roleplay-centered game, combat light. Well, I've been sick of it for the last 5 sessions. You could have said something at any time, the DM put in. Y'all never gave me a chance. You never ask me how I'm doing anymore. We just show up and start gaming. Which we agreed to do because of how slow online games move. And you can stop the game or text. It would go a lot faster if we didn't have to sit around and listen to Fish Mom play out all her parental issues for an hour, which, by the way, I was really uncomfortable with. It was not an hour. Excuse me, I cut in. Oh, please, like you don't know. I'm playing a character. They are fictional. They are nothing like my parents. True, my parents are raging, irredeemable narcissists. The bards are just kind of flawed and pretty funny. And plot hooks for the next part of the story, the cleric's arc. Sure. The Wizards player thinks this is a great time to bring up the fact that he doesn't like 5th edition, and he was already planning for this to be his last session. I'm upset and rage-crying about everything that came before and trying to tell him that I respect his decision, but we will miss him. The monk butts back in. So we're not going to talk about my problem? That Fish Mom is hogging the spotlight with her mommy and daddy stand-ins? At this point, I was so angry I couldn't think straight. I think the DM reminded him that it was my arc and we agreed to this. I just blurted, "You don't know anything about my family situation. Please leave it out of this." Oh, I know all about it. You told us that you wanted to end yourself because we might leave you because of them. Are you even in therapy? No, I didn't even say that, and yeah, it's not working. I told him to go F himself and hung up. He got kicked out of the Discord by the DM, and the monk immediately texted. Well, I was going to say I still wanted to be your friend, even if I don't like your game, but then you blocked me. And that's how a really great game got derailed. The remaining players, minus the guy who apparently loves Pathfinder too much to play D&D, are still going to play, but it's going to take a while to get the taste out of our mouths. Well, that concludes that tale. If you'd like to hear another, I have one. This one is titled, A Different Kind of Horror. My horror story is somewhat like and somewhat unlike other stories. Like, in that, as many do, it documents the decline of a beloved player and DM. Unlike in that it isn't how we grew to abhor and oust a player, but how his diminished ability to play the game forced him from a prominent position in our group to one where he struggles to effectively participate. I met Kevin during a tough time in my life. Everything I had planned to do had been cut abruptly, if not entirely unexpectedly, short, and I was looking for some comfort. Never having had many, or very often any, friends in my home region, I went hunting for companionship at a place I had always felt welcome, my friendly local game store. Having run many games myself while away at college, I even headed the RPG club for a couple years. I felt fairly confident in my ability to get a scrappy group of adventurers pointed the right direction. The game shop let me put up a flyer, and lo and behold, it turned out there was already a group looking for new players. I'd never been in the shop at the right time to see them, but they saw my flyer and gave me a call. Though many of the players would eventually leave, and I remember a few of them very clearly, 3 of us in that campaign would form the core of our gaming group going forward. 1 was me, and 2 were longtime friends Rich and Kevin. Kevin was our DM, and at the time he was running a sequel of sorts to a campaign which had wrapped up years ago, our characters being the successors to the previous adventuring party's legacy, a party Rich had been a member of. Kevin was a great DM. I had played very little actual D&D in the past. Most of my exploits were either in Exalted or another entirely original system of my own design, and he and Rich shepherded me in how to properly write up a character sheet and play the game. When I quickly got tired of my halfling barbarian, Kevin was willing to work with me, and helped find an in-world exit of Brock and introduction of what would become my iconic half-orc monk, who famously forgot to switch to lethal damage while punching the BBG dragon into submission, giving said dragon a chance to recover and escape while we pillaged her hoard. Kevin wasn't just good at running games, he was a dungeon master in the most literal sense of the term. He and Rich are both older than me, just a hair younger than my parents. Rich by just a few days, and they've been playing D&D since the time before additions. Kevin had developed a strong ability to craft original dungeons that even someone like myself, more of an RP guy, loved to explore and puzzle out. One time, he had 3 layers of a map that went over top of one another, one showing the dungeon as we saw it, another revealing all the secret rooms we could find our way into, and the last detailing a network of secret passages that the goblins who maintained the dungeon used to sneak around and reset things after each group of adventurers left. All 3 layers placed atop one another was a sight to behold, mind-numbingly complex but dazzling cohesive. He could have worked for wizards designing whole modules, and these modules would have become classics. Could have, until about 3 years ago. See, Kevin, a bit older than most of the group, was always a little slow on the draw, or at least it seemed that way at first glance. The fact that he constructed extremely complex encounters and dungeons always made his DM style a little cumbersome, but his age didn't help. Rich was the same way when running and playing games, but what they shared was a deliberate slowness, making sure that everything was correct before tossing the dice, then double-checking before announcing the result. They had played with too many deceptive players, the sorts of which normally inhabit the stories on the sub, not to have developed an aversion to hasty action. It wasn't until Kevin had taken a break from being our sole DM, allowing other people a shot behind the screen, then returned to the role that we started to notice that he wasn't just deliberate anymore, he was forgetting things. Rich was the one who caught on the fastest. Knowing Kevin as long as he had, he knew a lot more about the conditions which ran in his family, so what to look for. Kevin's mother was in a nursing home suffering from advanced dementia, and Kevin, not even 60, was experiencing early onset symptoms of the same. When Kevin tried to start DMing again, his campaign quickly fell apart. Soon he asked for someone else to take over, and as far as I know, he ran only 3 more sessions of a campaign and was missing his usual spot before stepping around the DM screen for good. Things were just taking too long. He couldn't get his thoughts together quickly enough, and the sessions were dragging. What we got done in 10 sessions might have been possible in 6 or 7, with only moderately complex encounters taking multiple sessions at a time in some cases. The saddest thing about this change was that he employed that mind-boggling multi-layer map I mentioned before, just as the symptoms were starting to show. He was losing the ability to manage it effectively by the time we got a chance to explore his creation. Within another year, he was having issues keeping up with sessions, and by the time another player had passed, he couldn't always remember which character he was supposed to be playing in which campaign. We didn't cut him out of sessions entirely, of course, but we did need to make an increasingly concerted effort to keep him actively engaged. He's not too far gone yet, and if it wasn't for COVID, he'd be at the table with the group every week. But the fact that he lives in the same nursing home as his mother, who's at the stage where she needs to be in a locked wing to prevent her and others from wandering off, lends a certain morbid inevitability to the progression of his condition. Kevin has been a great friend to me, both at and away from the table. When my life got jumbled up, he was one of the folks who helped me put it back together. He's one of the few people outside my family I've really truly missed during the lockdown. And a big part of that is remembering how great DM he had been, and likely still would be, had his mind not started to betray him. I guess the moral of the story is to cherish your friends around the table, not to mention your own ability to play the game. You never know when it might be taken away from you, even if you're still able to roll a set of dice and read a character sheet when it is. Well, that concludes our tales for today. If you'd like to hear another, come back and I shall tell you one. If you'd like to hear another one right now, perhaps watch another video. There's a few off to the side.